ludicrous. You know, Bush at least made noises about consulting Congress before he waged war. Here, Obama just went straight to the UN, and they see that, and they understand what's really happening. They know who his real masters are. And so I think that there's a kind of a turning of the tide among the troops.
Well, for those that don't understand this, as a military a veteran yourself, as a constitutional lawyer, as somebody who's worked in Congress, I mean, this is 101, and so I want your take on it, that when the president says to Congress, and Congress says, hey, you've got to get authority from us, and he says, no, I don't, but he didn't just say that he had the power, he then groveled to the UN and put a statement out at whitehouse.gov saying, I did this for the credibility of the UN. He's saying, the UN is my boss. That's where the treason comes in. It's not just that he's a tyrant or unconstitutional. The treason is when you go under a foreign power, when you subordinate and seize governmental powers against the Constitution for another power. That's the definition of treason. And when an officer who's sworn an oath does it, it becomes high treason, or opening the drawbridge to the enemy. As a constitutional lawyer, do you concur with that analysis?
Well, I mean, treason defined by Article 3 is to wage war against the United States or aid and abet its enemies. And usually you have a declared war to let you know who the enemy is, who you should not be consorting with. And so, you know, I'm not sure if it fits the strict definition of treason the founders put in place, although I consider the United Nations to be our enemy. So I think it certainly is. There's certainly an argument made there.
Well, here's what I'm saying. In the more classical view of treason, let's say it's a sovereign. If a prince of England, and there were some of these cases, consorted with the French king to overthrow his brother so that the French king would come in and invade and put him on the throne, they'd cut your head off. That's high treason. And so this is a level of treason that perhaps the founders couldn't even foresee, where the president is suborning and taking orders from a foreign institution. I mean, if that is not treason, what is?
Well, they certainly understood that could happen, which is why they require that the president be a natural-born citizen. They were concerned about the influence of foreign loyalties and foreign allegiances. And so there is that. But
you're right, they were concerned, but I mean, for me, it's treason. And I'll just say it, he's a tyrant, he's a traitor, he's a piece of trash, but he's a puppet.
Well, I think that's true. And what I would also add is that this is nothing new. Unfortunately, since World War II, since the creation of the United Nations, we have sent our men into harm's way on behalf of the United Nations.
Sure, but this is but usually Congress agrees to it, and you know, Private Michael knew all that. I mean, for me to have the president saying, "I don't need you, Congress," when they're even going public with it, I've got the UN. I mean, what next will he say? Russia gave him an order? Maybe China because they own our debt. I mean, this is one hell of a precedent, Stewart.
Well, it certainly is. He's just taking the next logical step, just like he's taking the next logical step on saying he can assassinate American citizens found wherever they are. So he's just taking it to the next level. But I just, I want to make it very clear that Bush did the same thing, although not as blatant as far as.
Well, yeah, no, that's as you said. That's how the tyranny works. It gets crazier and crazier. So by logical extension, what do you predict as the next move by this president or the next one if it's not Ron Paul? I mean, how much further does it go?
Well, if he can wage war under UN mandate, setting aside the requirements of the Constitution for Congress to declare war, if he can sidestep Congress for that, and he can sidestep Congress when it comes to raising the debt limit, then he can sidestep Congress for anything. And he can do it under the rubric of the United Nations. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he's foolish enough to try to do a gun ban treaty or something like that through the United Nations. So if he can't get it done, this is the pattern of executive. If he can't get it done through Congress, they ignore Congress and claim the powers of the executive branch. Well, now they're going a step beyond that and saying, even forget about that. It's under the United Nations. Well,
that's my next point. If they put in the Unidentification Treaty that calls for a small arms ban, handguns, rifles, all of it, and even mainline pundits have written letters. Congress people have gone public, as you know, in the last month and said they're really trying to sign this treaty. If it's not treason, what is it when the government goes to a foreign power and says we're taking your guns? I mean, for me, that's treason against the Bill of Rights, Constitution, against the Republic. I mean, it's overthrowing the system, disarming us, making us slaves, is waging war against us.
I agree. I would agree with that. I would say that at that point they've crossed the line into making war on the American people. And I think the response would be would be surprising to them. Let's put it that way. I do not believe the people of the United States are going to go along with that. And frankly, if we went along with that, we deserve to be slaves.
Now, Stewart, I want to move quickly now in the time we have left with you here at Infowars Nightly News. Again, the websites are prisonplanet.tv and InfoWarsNews.com. We're adding a lot of new features, as viewers know. We're bringing you this true alternative, true constitutional, liberty-based news because of your support. We couldn't have done it. If you're not a subscriber watching this in another venue out there, I know some TV stations are now even taking the live feed at 7 p.m. Central. Please think about becoming subscribers to prisonplanet.tv if you want to not be behind us, but right beside us in this fight. Quartzsite. Recap briefly what's happened in Quartzsite and the latest developments and now what's coming up, Stewart. Then I want to get into Fast and Furious with you, and we'll leave it at that.
Sounds good. Well, Quartzsite, we just had a rally down there. We had Jordan Page come and join us and play, and we went there in support of the 10 police officers who stood up and blew the whistle on their chief for arresting political opponents. And so they said, we're not going to go along with this. It was on point with our message of Oath Keepers. And we figured, hey, we need to support them and do the right thing. And so we had 10 stand-up cops who did the right thing. We went down there and supported them. And we actually managed to get 2 sitting Arizona state legislators, Representative Burgess and also Representative Seal, to join us there in Quartzsite and speak to the officers. And they're contemplating, at least looking into holding hearings to oversee. Sure.
I should have pointed out you already had one rally. I had read that also now more are planned, but this is amazing. Hundreds and hundreds of people shown in the middle of nowhere. Tell viewers, though, recapping exactly what happened in Quartzsite, because some people don't know.
Well, it started with the arrest of Jennifer Jones. It went all over YouTube, but it had been going on before that. That was the most blatant example right there on video of someone being arrested because they didn't like her free speech. It was really an Alice in Wonderland experience to watch the town council one guy made a motion to remove her from the podium, and that was seconded, and they all voted for it. And the mayor sitting there going, Mary Foster, was saying, hey, wait a minute, you can't do this. You can't remove her for free speech. But they overrid his objection. They ordered the chief of police to go arrest her, and he did. He hauled her out because they didn't like what she was asking. She was asking tough questions about finances. Where's the money going? And so they had her arrested. And that was the kind of the start of it. Then the 10 officers did their resolution saying, we don't trust the chief. He should be put on suspension until there's an investigation done by the state. And they called for a state investigation. And they actually had the police union there for a change, standing up for the right thing, coming in on the side of the 10 officers against the chief. And so we saw that was too important an example of what's right and what should be done for us to ignore. We want to go there and support them, and we hope that more police officers across the country will do the same thing. Stand up and keep their oath and do what's right.
I agree with you, and we'll continue to watch this as it develops, because if they can get away with what they've done in Quartzsite, they can basically get away with anything. Now, Stewart, I want to get now into a final subject. I don't have words to describe the federal docket that we covered last night in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune, the El Paso Times. It's all been released. It's all been confirmed. Sinaloa drug cartel, probably the biggest in Mexico, definitely the biggest in the north, and that's where all the drugs are coming through, $500 billion a year, financed by the ATF and the CIA. And they've now said, yes, this guy does work for us and he does deserve immunity. The head of U.S. operations, number 2 in the Sinaloa cartel. Here's just another example. So it's not just guns being shipped into Mexico and Honduras, but now we learn Chicago, Indianapolis, Tampa, all over the country. I mean, it even shocks me that the feds are so corrupt that at least for 2.5 years, we have evidence that went back to Bush, that they're shipping guns all over Mexico, all over Latin America to gangs they're using to knock out their competition, and guns into the U.S. to then also blame the Second Amendment. And for 5 years, Sinaloa reportedly shipped in tens of billions of dollars just through Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona with full federal support. I mean, this is just mind-blowing that it all comes out and nobody gets in trouble. If we know about this, Stewart, what else is going on?
Yeah, it reminds you of the drug smuggling through Arkansas, right?
Yeah, exactly. Arkansas and Mina.
Right, exactly. This is something you really should have David Codrea and Mike Vanderbilt come on your show and talk about this. Those are the two bloggers that really blew that whole gun runner thing wide open this last year and have been relentless in making sure.
Sure, it started in Arizona, but it's turned out it's just everywhere. Drugs, smuggling, guns, everything.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And so this is kind of like the climate change stuff that got exposed. If we could expose this and keep the drumbeat up, it kind of puts the nail in the coffin, at least for now, of any attempts to destroy the Second Amendment. Same kind of thing. If the average Joe out there sees it for what it really is, and is not going to buy it, then they can manipulate all they want, and create chaos and havoc on the border all they want, and no one's going to fall for it.
Well, that's my point. Is though, if we caught them on this, you find 2 or 3 roaches when you turn the light on. Imagine what's behind the walls. I mean, this is It even shocks me that it's this bold, this wild. I mean, they're not just shipping drugs in, they're shipping guns all over, and then blaming the Second Amendment for it, even when they get caught. It's just wow.
Well, they rely on the mainstream media to keep doing that, but we have alternative media like you, and so I think that's the problem for them, is they know that eventually the gig is going to be up. The average person is going to be a mind shift. A tipping of the balance among the populace, and they're going to see them as being illegitimate. And so they're in a race. I think they know that the clock is ticking on their own legitimacy. And so my concern is they're going to try to pull the plug and try to create chaos and clamp down with martial law before we get to the point of that tipping point of awakenness.
I agree with you, but we've pre-warned people, and I would challenge the globalists not to miscalculate. I know they're going to lose if they go to that, but it's going to cause a lot of pain. That's why I'm trying to avert it. But no doubt they're prepping everybody for a false flag to be blamed on Tea Party, Patriot type groups. But it's Oath Keepers that's telling police, military, law enforcement to keep their oath. And it was ATF agents that actually did the right thing and began to blow the whistle. Then alternative media picked it up. And now here we are. So that gives me a lot of faith, Stewart. And that's why the work you're doing at Oath Keepers is so essential. If it wasn't essential, you wouldn't have ADL, Southern Poverty Law Center, and all these other miscreant, globalist, anti-American organizations lying about you, demonizing you. And we all know you wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the prayers and support of everybody out there. Stewart Rhodes, God bless you, and I hope people visit oathkeepers.org.
Thank you, Alex. Likewise.
We're going to defeat these tyrants. Thank you for joining us. Well, that's it for Infowars Nightly News. Lord willing, we'll see you back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central. And yes, you found it, ladies and gentlemen. You found it, the modern-day spirit of 1776, and we mean to spread liberty worldwide. We'll see you back tomorrow night.